Hi, I'm Kenny Klaus, and this is State 48 Homeowner.
Hey, and welcome to the State 48 Homeowner Podcast. And today we're going to answer the question, what the heck does a title company do? And so we've got Alysia Moore with us and Czajkowski from Fidelity National Title. How you guys doing?
We're good.
Excellent.
Good.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So let's answer that question.
Actually, I'm going to start. Do you mind if I start?
Go ahead, Don.
I'm
Go ahead.
a little over 9 years at Fidelity, and so I'm on the sales side. I don't do any of the actual work. I'm, a talking head for the company, and Alysia and her team, when I very first started, I didn't know how to describe to people, and so now I got about 10%. So we're gonna let Alysia take the answer from here, but it is really. Amazing things that they do and making sure that homeowners are protected in the purchase of their home. But yeah, Alysia, take it away.
Yeah, so I wish that I could say it's a totally sexy process of the things that we do. It's not too exciting, but really ultimately our role in our side of the industry is to be the facilitator between the agents, the buyers, the sellers, the mortgage brokers, the lenders. We help facilitate all the execution of all of the documents. One of the biggest pieces, though, that we play in our role is making sure that the title is clear for the buyer coming into title. What that necessarily means is we make sure there's no liens, no judgments, nothing unaccounted for on the title. So when you go to purchase your property, you're not months down the road going, hey, why does it say so-and-so owns my property? Or, hey, there's a lien for $50,000 attached to this property. What is this? So our main role is ensuring that the title is clear and then doing the execution of the documents between the parties and then recording those necessary deeds to give the buyer the new ownership and the seller their check when it's all done.
Perfect. So let's dive into what title actually is. I think there's a lot of people out there that think that because they have not paid off their mortgage, that the bank owns the property and they just get to live there. But no, when you buy the property, we say you're on title, which means you are the owner of the property.
Correct. Yeah. So there's a document called a warranty deed. So when you close on your transaction, you get the vested title of that property. So what that means is you have a recorded document that says, I, John Doe, a single man, now own this property. You have the title to the property. That is the title to your property. Because you have a mortgage doesn't mean you don't own your property. That just means you have accessed basically a loan to purchase the property. So that's just a debt that would be later forgiven as you make your monthly payments. But the title itself is the warranty deed that gets recorded. So you are the vested actual owner in the property once that deed records. So that is what your title is.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people get confused at everything because they have vehicles and they go buy the vehicle, and as they go to leave the dealership, they do not get the pink slip. Because the bank is going to hold on to that.
Right.
Because it's a very different thing on buying a car versus, buying a house. Now, you do own the car.
Yes.
It's just there's a lien there. And in the same case with homes is there's a lien. It's just when we're recording it, it is recorded in the name of the person and not the name of the bank.
Correct. And mobile homes are a little bit trickier. We do handle those transactions as well. You will have the title to the property, which is the land itself, but you will still also have title to the mobile home as well. So there is small few instances in those cases where you'll have what would be considered two separate titles, because you'll have a title to the mobile home itself and then you'll have a title to the land. So that's really the only time you'll ever have two titles per se.
Well, and I think that also in what that whole title process is, that's so important is that when you're the seller, that it is now making sure all of the debts related to that property are cleared.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that new buyer, that they're coming with none of those debts, right? So when they buy the property, that they only debts that are the ones that they have agreed to in the process of that home, and that's where the insurance part comes in and all of that. But the research and the amount of work that goes in, and sometimes 10-day closings and 20-day closings, the amount of it going in there to guarantee that all of that is in place is pretty amazing that gets done in that amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. As a seller going into a transaction, you definitely need to have the anticipation that there's going to be some personal information that we're going to have to obtain, because we're going to have to ensure that those debts are paid and cleared through the closing, to make sure that we can issue that clear title insurance policy to the buyer as the new owner coming in.
Now, when you search the history, how are you going back?
We're going the whole life of the property. So from the time it went from land to property, we are going all the way back. So we have a full chain of title done. So
you're not going back to the Mexican Empire?
No. Not that far. Not that far. Oh, please, not that far. But no, for the life of the property, which in some cases is, it's great. And then other cases, it's not so great because, sometimes you find some things that were done 25, 30 years ago that the now owners weren't even privy to. And that could be anything from uninsured deeds, somebody just going to record a deed from their trust to themselves, but they forgot, hey, I have a wife or I have a husband, but we didn't do anything with that interest in the property. So now, we as the title insurer on the title side, now that's part of our job too, is making sure, again, that's part of clearing the title and ensuring that clear title to the
It's
buyer.
funny because these are some of the little things that sometimes seem like an annoyance while it's going through the process, and people are like, oh my gosh, why do we have to worry about this thing? We didn't own the property then. But the goal is still to make sure that you're clear, right? That you don't have to worry about some, skeletons coming out of the closet from years and years ago, from before you own the property, and somebody else now saying we're owed X amount of dollars, or we own the property, or something like that, right? So this is what Alysia and her team are doing. And while sometimes those things might seem like an annoyance, it's for the protection of that buyer, and also to make sure that the seller is not having something coming chasing them years down the road as well.
Absolutely.
So title companies in Arizona are a lot easier than closing other places in the country where you might have multiple parties, attorneys, where you'll have, the title company, you'll have separate people that are handling escrows. So how do you guys wear all the hats?
We run the circus every day. I'm just kidding. No, you're right, Scott. A lot of other places, usually from about the Midwest on to the East Coast, you are dealing with a title company, you're dealing with an escrow company, you're dealing with attorneys. In Arizona, far different. Your title and escrow company are one and the same. We operate under the same umbrella. We on our side, so we take on the role of drawing those necessary documents for your closing, which in some states, that's an attorney's role. An attorney will be the one to draw all your documents. In the state of Arizona, we draw those documents, with the exception of loan documents. We don't draw your loan documents. That is a separate function there for the lender. But from the title standpoint, we'll be the ones that handles the facilitation of the signing of all sets of documents, including the ones that we draw,
and answering questions.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been doing this almost 18 years, and so I'm well versed in all documents. But yeah, I mean, we are here to help and explain those documents from your smallest of questions to your biggest of questions. So that's, a lot of our role is really just being that facilitator and that person that you can ask your questions to, because most consumers don't understand what we do. I mean, I get asked all the time, so what do you do? And I say what I do, and they're like, So hopefully this provides some insight as what we do here at Fidelity and how we handle your real estate transactions on our side.
This video is brought to you by Klaus Team Real Estate Solutions. The Klaus Team is different. With the Klaus Team, you have someone on your side. Where you live and make memories is important. We have more unique strategies than anyone else to help you accomplish what matters most to you. We can help you with traditional real estate as well as other options such as our lease purchase programs. We can help you buy first then sell, and we can bring you instant offers. We're here to help our neighbors achieve the American dream and help them build wealth through home ownership. For more info or to start your home search, visit us online at klausteam.com.
And I think also the way things are responded to is important as well. That we don't want to be alarmist, right? So Alysia and her team, they see so many different things, and that if you're the buyer or the seller, you haven't heard about like these things, and your last name is Smith, and these common last names, and that there's a lot more things likely to come up in the process when you have a common last name. Like my last name is not very common, so it doesn't happen with me a lot. But when somebody has those common last names, that things might get flagged that aren't actually them, and that might sound very alarming to a buyer or a seller. That, oh my gosh, this came up, that's not me. What's going to happen? But this is where Alysia and her team are just so good at working through those things and trying to figure out how to, to deliver that information in a non-alarming way and make sure that, hey, look, these are just the things we need to check these boxes to make sure that we can show that this isn't you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say too, for our position in the transaction, we're here to protect all parties. So we're not asking for the things that we ask for as far as like personal information, which would boil down to like date of birth, last four of the social, to obtain demands. Like Dawn was saying too, in order to clear an identity of possible like common names, we have to ask for personal identifying information. And that is solely to protect you as the seller, but to also protect the buyer coming in. And then obviously the lender as well, because the lender also has a title insurance policy and they are taking on a debt that they're securing against the property. So they have some skin in the game as well. So really we're here to protect all parties. So when we ask for the personal information, it is more so to protect you and then also for us to be able to get the demands necessary to close.
All right. One of the things that you guys do is escrow.
Yes.
So let's talk about what escrow is. I know people have different ideas on what it is, just based on, people will have an escrow for their loan on the life of the loan. Other people have seen escrows just in sales online and things like that. What does that process look like for you guys?
So common misconception is you look at your mortgage statement, you see escrow account. We get confused for that escrow all the time. We are not one and the same. So the escrow account, just to clear that up, if you're looking at a mortgage statement, you see escrow account, impound account, those are your escrowed items, meaning those are the items that were paid through your escrow transaction with your mortgage payment in a monthly breakdown of your payment. And it goes into what's called an escrow impound reserve account. But we are not one and the same. Those payments don't come to us. No. Once loan closes, we're completely detached.
The concept is very similar, though, that you're holding back money until the right time to disperse it.
Yeah, so on the escrow side, and that's why I think it gets very confusing for people, is because we are the facilitator of all of the funds as well as the escrow portion of the transaction, as the escrow company, it is confusing that, hey, well, I have this escrow account, I should be paying it to you. No, that's actually split. But we do, on the escrow side, we do facilitate all of the funds. We will take the earnest money when the contract gets executed. We'll take in the closing funds. We'll take in the lender's funds for the funding of the loan. And then we actually, on the escrow side, handle all the disbursements of all funds to the agents, all funds to buyers and sellers, if there's refunds, creditors, anything of that nature, debts for mortgages, etc. So on that portion of the escrow, that's what we do on the escrow side, but we're not one and the same as the escrow impound account, which, I mean, we do get quite a few calls. Hey, I need to check my escrow account balance. We're not them. We're not them. So, but yeah, because we facilitate all the funds on the escrow side as part of our function, as part of our job function, I think there's a misconception there. People don't understand that.
Now, when we have buyers coming from out of state, what do they normally think is weird about how we do things?
Typically an out-of-state buyer, more so Midwest, East Coast, instantly it is assumed that when you sign, you get your keys. When you sign, you get your check as a seller. We don't operate that way in Arizona. We have to actually record all documents, meaning we have to record the warranty deed, the deed of trust, any other pertinent documents to the transaction and the title of the property before we can say, hey, we've recorded and disperse your funds. And in Arizona, we don't take possession of keys as a neutral third party. Yep. Agents take on that responsibility, so we let them we let them take that responsibility. We let them give all the congratulations, and then you can do your key exchange then. But those are the two biggest things we constantly see with out-of-state buyers and sellers.
And I know some people are confused that there's no meeting of the minds in Arizona. Right. There's 75% of the time, that's a number I just pulled out of my head. Yeah. It's probably not accurate, but 75% of the time, the buyers probably will never meet the sellers, unless they happen to run into each other at an inspection or something like that. Yep. Whereas other parts of the country, they almost always do.
Yeah, a lot of parts of the country, you are sitting across the table from your seller, from your buyer, with each respected attorney.
Either
on each
smiling
side.
or glaring.
Oh, yeah, or throwing things across the table. You don't know. I mean, we have had it where we've had some instances where, buyers and sellers are crossing paths coming into signings. We try not to have that happen very often just because we don't know what the situation is behind, the doors, or, we don't know everything. But yeah, Arizona, that is one thing that we also don't do. Everybody doesn't sign at the signing table at the exact same time. And I can say one of the biggest things that I think throws people off is the use of the word signing and closing. So we see that, yes, there is a difference, and we see that even with lenders. They'll be like, well, when is closing? Okay, closing and signing are two different things in the state of Arizona. Signing is the date that you execute your documents. Closing in the state of Arizona is the day that we fund and record your transaction.
What was the second word you had there? That's the key. Is fund and record.
And record. Yes, fund and record.
Because
fund
there's times that we get
money.
everything done, but the county doesn't record it in time, so we actually close the next day.
Yeah. So ultimately, our goal, at least for me and my team, we try to get all the funds in the day prior. So the only thing we're having to do on the day of closing is just record that transaction for you guys. We try not to do everything, sign, fund, and record same day. That doesn't make it very fun for anybody because we're all running around with our hair cut off. So, blah.
Let's talk about simultaneous transactions.
Yeah.
How in the world are you? And so for a simultaneous transaction, we're talking about a seller that is closing on the sale of their home and closing on the purchase of their next home on the same day. How in the world do you guys handle that?
With grace.
Because that's two transactions with moving parts.
Yes.
Sometimes as many as 4 different agents.
Yeah.
And you guys are able to handle that, and honestly, more frequently than I think a lot of people think.
Yeah, and it's actually not uncommon too. We've had almost 3 legs simultaneously closing.
Oh, because one of the parties has 2, the other party has 2. And
so honestly, it's a lot easier than it looks. It is much easier when it's housed within the same title company, but it's not undoable when it's not. So essentially, it comes down to we have to be in communication with that other title company. That is what will make it the most seamless transaction as possible. Because once we're in communication with the opposite end, then us and them can communicate and say, okay, these are the amount of funds that I need. These are the amount of funds I'm going to need you to send me. I need your wiring instructions. We'll get all of that squared away, and then we can communicate should there be any delays. So we're all, working together cohesively to make the transaction run as smoothly as possible. But definitely biggest thing is we've got to have that contact information
and
for that.
Just much easier if it all happens at the same title company.
Absolutely. Because then we're just merely transferring funds from one file to the next versus we've got to make a wire cutoff. We've got to get these funds out. They've got to get to, XYZ title company in order for them to meet their recording cutoff as well. So it is much easier when it's all in-house, but it's not undoable when it's not. It just comes down to communication really between us and the other title
And I think
company.
there's times that people worry about, maybe they were planning to use a specific title company and worried about moving because, that's the seller's title company. Let's talk about neutral third party.
Yeah, so as a title company on the escrow and title side, we are strictly a neutral third party, which means there's no,
You're not the seller's title company.
No, we're not the seller's title company. We're not the
company.
buyer's title company. We're not out here, just rooting on one side. We're rooting everybody on. Our only goal in every transaction is to successfully get it closed as seamlessly as possible. So as a neutral third party, that's why we don't take possession of keys. That's why we don't take possession of check exchanges for personal property within the properties. That's why communications with regards to cancellations as far as, the what ifs. Well, what if this happens if I cancel? What if this happens? We try to put off some of those conversations to be had with the agents until a cancellation is actually submitted to us. Reason being is because as a neutral third party, if we start having those conversations with one side of the transaction, it looks to be more unneutral. It puts us in an unneutral position.
Well, and I think that the contract itself is super important here as well, and that's because ultimately, Alysia and her team are executing the contract as written.
Yes.
And and so and it's funny because I meant this and I meant that, and so, which is fine. Things can be changed mid-transaction as long as all parties agree. Mm-hmm. And because that is already in her team, they're going to execute as things are written unless otherwise directed. But again, everybody has to be in agreement. And so I think that's really important as well, that, because things come up, right? Inspections and all the things, right? All these different things come up in that process. Yeah. And, but as that's coming up, then everybody's going to get together. They're going to negotiate out what that looks like and then have whatever that strategy is from there. So, but ultimately executing what was written, can't read into intent.
Yeah. Yeah. And we get that oftentimes in, one of our, old escrow admin back in the day used to say, what you wrote versus what you meant is so important. We can try to interpret what you meant, but that doesn't always mean that that's what you meant. So yeah, and we're instruction takers on the escrow side, like Don said. Essentially, we're instruction takers. As a neutral third party, we will read and take off the instruction of what is provided to us, but that instruction has to be given to us. So as a neutral third party, those instructions have to be brought to us for us to follow. But it's very important. Contract and how you write your contract.
And if you have an experienced agent, or if you decide to go about it yourself, these are some things to think on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So last question. So we've been talking about what you guys do when you have a buyer and a seller and you're transferring property that way. But that's not the only thing you guys handle. What are some of the other things that services that you're able to provide?
So unfortunately, part of our job is we get to deal with a lot of diverse situations on transactions. What I'm kind of getting at there is a lot of probate situations. What probate is essentially is we've got a lot of deceased persons in title, but we have some great resources. So we will help facilitate that process for the parties as far as getting them in contact with a necessary real estate attorney that can help get that process in order with the courts so that we can close. We also deal with a lot of, I would say, marital issue problems where we have, spouses separating in the midst of the transactions and facilitating the execution of the documents. One of the big things that we do see is quitclaim deeds. Unfortunately, from a title standpoint, quitclaim deeds are not title insurable because anybody can go out there and record a quitclaim deed and have no vested interest in the property, which is why years ago title companies finally said, hey, we're not going to partake in those anymore and insuring them. So we will work with the attorneys in getting those necessary documents in order to either have a new deed signed or get a copy of that divorce decree, only the pertinent information that we would need to show, hey, John Doe was awarded the property or Jane Doe was awarded the property. So we get to deal with a lot of that stuff. Also, like we were talking earlier about clearing title with the liens, getting lien releases and drawing those up and getting those executed. So we kind of wear a lot of hats. We take on quite a bit. Some of it's not pretty. Some of it is fun and some of it's not.
Chasing down tax stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what IRS and all that you guys are. So all of those kind of problem solving throughout the transaction.
Solars. Solar's a big thing in Arizona. Unfortunately, solar companies have kind of taken us out of that role, and we've have to push it onto the sellers. They've stopped allowing the title companies to facilitate those roles in obtaining the payoffs for the solar or the transfer documents. But that is one of our functions for at least the companies that will allow us to still do that. But yeah, like Don said too, IRS liens, those are always fun. But we have workarounds. We've got some contacts down at the IRS offices and some workarounds to help facilitate that as well.
And then we've got the one that we're going to handle, but it's not going to transfer property yet. Let's talk about beneficiary deeds.
Okay, so beneficiary deeds are great. What a beneficiary deed is essentially is you are drawing up a deed. It's called a beneficiary's deed because what happens is you have changed the vesting from yourself to whether it's your heirs, it's a family member, it's a friend. So in the event that you pass away, as soon as that death certificate gets recorded, the property then becomes that of who was vested in the beneficiary's deed. Now, we won't be able to draw the beneficiary's deed, but we do have resources that we refer our clients to be able to draw those and help with that process. But beneficiary deeds are great. It's as long as they are recorded prior to the passing of the person that is recording that deed.
And it is a public document.
Yes, it is
It will
public.
show up on tax records. It will show up.
Yes.
Anybody in the world can go download it. So that is one of those things. It's not a hidden feature for people. That if you are leaving it to just one child, your other children will know.
Yeah, yes, they will. They will find out. So nothing is a secret. Unfortunately, in Arizona, we have access to all recorded documents. So if you're trying to hide something, just remember, it's a public record.
So if they have further questions, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
So you can go ahead and give our office a call. You can send my team an email. I'll have Scott put all that up on the YouTube.
It is right there.
It is right there. Okay, look at him. He put it on here already. So yeah, you can go ahead and give us a call. Shoot us an email. We're here to help you guys and any questions and give you any answers you might be looking for or help facilitate your title and escrow needs.
Thank you both so much, and we'll have you back on real quick.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks for spending time with us this week at State 48 Homeowner, the ins and outs of owning an Arizona home. You can connect with us for more information, submit topics you'd like us to discuss further, and you can see relevant videos, give us feedback, answer your real estate questions, and more at state48homeowner.com.